chainers, wherever you are in the world. This is Sarah Barnes-Humphrey with you today. Are you ready? Let's talk supply chain. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Thoughts and Coffee. My name is Sarah Barnes-Humphrey. I am the founder and host of Let's Talk Supply Chain, as well as the Blended Podcast. And I am the founder of the Blended Pledge, and I am coming at you live from Cleveland. I am here for the NMFTA Cybersecurity Conference. I'm in a room in the Hilton Cleveland downtown, so I apologize a little bit for the lighting, but we've got a great show for you today. We've got a big announcement. Plus, we're going to be talking to Ilya of PackSafe about cold chain. We're going to be talking about 2-day shipping and so much more. But before we do that, I do want to mention the Secret Society of Supply Chain. Head over to secretsocietyofsupplychain.com, sign up for our newsletter because we've got some major changes coming to that community, and I want you to be the first ones to know about it. And we've got to let you know what's happening at Let's Talk Supply Chain right now. So let's do that. We've got a brand new episode with Jeff from Manhattan. It's episode 432. If you haven't gone and listened, go and check it out. This is, I think, one of the first times we've had a data scientist on the show talking about the future of forecasting. And if you missed Thoughts and Coffee last week, Jeff was on Thoughts and Coffee talking about some of the similar issues around digitalization, technology, supply chain technology. And it's really great to hear from the source. So go and check that out, episode 432, wherever you listen to the show. We've put the link in the comments. Next, I don't know what you're doing on Thursday, but I hope you're joining us at 1 p.m. Eastern, because I'm going to be talking to Miriam from SDI about how inflation is purchasing and procurement's number one threat. And we're going to be talking about how to conquer that. So click the attend button, even if you can't attend live, because I'm going to send you the link to the recording so you can watch it, you can share it with your teams, because there are going to be some major insights shared on that one. And then on Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern, Eric Johnson is going to go live for LogTech Live, and he's talking about ocean shipping rules, illegal shifts, and what shippers need to know. So again, click the attend button. And Relex goes live on my birthday, Wednesday, November 13th at 9 a.m. Eastern. Click the attend button. They're going to be talking about supply chain excellence. And then, of course, Supply Chain Unfiltered, Wednesday, November 20th at 10 a.m. Eastern, talking about value-added logistics in today's market. And remember, go and click the attend button because we will always send you that link so that you can watch that later. We also have a brand new episode of Blended. Blended is our podcast where we bring 5 different people from different walks of life together to talk about diversity and inclusion topics. And this month's topic is do's and don'ts of employee resource groups. So many incredible insights shared from our panelists. You don't want to miss this one. Especially if you've got ERGs or you're thinking about ERGs, this is the episode for you. And last but not least, we've got some in-person events coming up. NMFTA is up there because I am there right now. We've got Women in Supply Chain Forum. That's coming up on November 12th and 13th. And I can't wait to see everybody in Atlanta. And then, of course, we've got Manifest happening February 10th through 12th in Vegas next year. All right. Well, without further ado, it is time to bring up our guest for today because we've got a lot to talk about and some really cool topics to go over. All right. Ilya, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Sarah. Great to be here.
How are you? How's the week been so far? I know we're only at Tuesday. It's kind of a weird, but
I think you're in Ohio. I'm actually right next door in Indiana. It's about to be November and it's 80 degrees outside. So I don't think it can get much better.
It's a pretty nice day out there. I'm not going to lie. Actually, here, I think it's raining a little bit, but
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh.
Neither here nor there, but that's okay. It's all good. I mean, we can't beat this weather for the end of October. And especially, I'm just glad for Halloween because I don't know about you, but I remember wearing snowsuits under my Halloween costume, and that was just not fun.
It seemed like every year, right? Every year it was cold. And yeah, no, it's this Halloween's going to be very, very pleasant. Very.
Yeah. Do you go do you dress up for Halloween? I haven't in years, but
I haven't in the last few years either. I did probably into my early 30s, and the last 5 or 6 years I dropped off. But this year we'll be passing out candy. I think
nice.
we'll be seeing our neighborhood went all out. I think I've never seen more Halloween decorations in one place. Like
I was kind of
the
thinking the same.
Griswold. I don't know if you saw Christmas Vacations, but the Griswold lights. It feels that way in our neighborhood. But excited to see all the costumes.
Yeah. So your neighborhood is the one to go to. We will not tell everybody live, but if you're close and you know Ilya, definitely go to to their neighborhood. All right. So for everybody who doesn't know you, why don't you tell everybody who you are and what you do, and maybe a little bit about PackSafe?
Yeah, happy to. So Ilya Preston, I am one of the two co-founders at PackSafe. I'm the CEO here. Started the company about 6 years ago. Prior to PackSafe, I spent about a decade on the enterprise side. So I started my career at Cummins as a part of their supply chain strategy team, building engines and engine components and building out global supply chain strategies for all of those raw materials that get shipped around and make up the engine. I spent several years after that on the management consulting side. So lived out of a suitcase, had a different client every 3 months, worked for KPMG and PwC.
Okay.
The last 2 years specifically within cold chain. So I spent about 2 years on the life sciences side, helping companies build digital transformation strategies and essentially make decisions around where they're going to invest their capital. From an IT infrastructure side, from a ERP, visibility, TMS side. And our teams were oftentimes brought in to help these companies take all of that data that they were getting from all these disparate systems and set up standard operating procedures around that data, make it actionable, know exactly how they're going to use it, how to add context around it, and where to deploy the human capital surrounding all these platforms. 6 years ago, we actually just celebrated our 6th birthday at PackSafe.
Congratulations. I was going to say that. I saw the post last week. So congratulations on that 6 years.
Yeah, thank you so much. 6 years ago, Ashok and I, my co-founder and I, had this vision to put the cold chain on autopilot, right? So to essentially be able to create a platform that enables shippers to have the most seamless, streamlined experience in shipping cold chain goods. We are effectively a risk management and decision intelligence platform for temperature controlled logistics. Sarah, I'm sure as you and your viewers know, it's difficult to ship anything from point A to point Z. We see that in our everyday Amazon deliveries. When you add the complexity around temperature and humidity, when you have to account for those things, and these are typically products that are the most important products in the world, right? They're getting consumed by people, by people like you and I, food, medicines, vaccines, blood, etc. It's very, very difficult to manage that whole shipping process. And so, the industry has tried to deploy sensors, deploy IoT into these products or onto pallets that are carrying these products to get more intelligence, to live stream product location and condition data. But the industry is still having problems. It's still $40 billion worth of lost goods in pharma, still 750, it's like 20x that on the produce side. So a lot of wasted product, regardless of all the technologies that are being deployed. And so what we do as PackSafe is we effectively help companies reduce their product loss, optimize their decision making, and optimize their network performance.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate that overview. And I know that cold chain is a hot topic in supply chain. I believe that Manifest and TPM both decided to include a cold chain component to their curriculum for both of those events. And I think I might have somebody to introduce you to after this show. So we'll talk a little bit later about that. I want to ask everybody who is watching, we want to know where you're watching from. If you have any questions about anything that we're going to be talking about today, make sure you put it into the comments comments because we definitely want to give you a shout out. Well, now it's time for us to go into the poll of the week. So the question we asked everybody, and remember, we do a poll every single Wednesday morning across LinkedIn and Instagram. So make sure you're being part of that conversation. Our community really comes together around these. So the question we asked, how important is networking in your supply chain strategy? Now, my screen is a little small right now, so I got to go check the numbers. 64% said essential for success. 27% of you said important, but not a focus. 7% said sometimes useful. 2% said not a priority. Ilya, what do you think about these results? I have some opinions, which I'll share in a minute, but I want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, I think if you would have asked me 5 or 6 years ago, I probably would have been towards the bottom end of this list. I was very much of the mindset that if you build the best product, they will come. And networking be damned. It doesn't matter who you know. At the end of the day, buyers are going to make the best decisions for their companies, regardless. And what I found very quickly, I think we got a rude awakening, is that especially in specific industries, especially in industries like pharma, in industries like produce and food and beverage and flowers, these seem like very giant industries where there's thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people. It's actually very, very small especially when it comes from a decision making standpoint. And people know people. Everybody knows everybody. So we spent the first few years kind of as outsiders trying to sell into these industries, and we had a very contrarian take on the market and where the need is. And it's good to see, now a few years later, the market coming around to the very initial messaging that we were putting out there and finding agreement with what we put forth years ago. But I think we've learned that, I think networking is very important. We've had to bring on industry specialists that came from, our customers or that have come from the industries that we sell into to build that credibility gap. And so, to that point, I think networking across most industries is important, but especially within the industries that we sell into.
That is such a great story. And I want to acknowledge and appreciate you for sharing that, because that's not easy, right? Sometimes with lessons learned, we don't want to share what that is. And I appreciate you for sharing that story, because a lot of folks don't realize how important networking is. And it's not just as a founder of a new company, it's also for your individual, your professional career as well. I was recently talking to a CEO of an organization. It was getting bought out. And I was like, what are you going to do next? And they were like, I'm thinking about doing consulting. But I get asked to speak all the time, and I get lots of reactions on all of my posts. And I said, well, that's because you're a CEO of a well-known brand. What happens to that when you go into the consulting world? What does that look like? What are your networking skills? You need to be saying yes to those opportunities and networking, because your network is really going to help you in every stage of your professional career. So I just wanted to share that. And I'm so thankful for you to share your experience. Now, if any of you have an experience that you want to share, make sure to put it in the comments, because we definitely want to hear from you. Anything else to add to that?
No, I mean, I hear you. I think networking for me, came very naturally from my prior life, but there are certainly a lot of people that I've met along the way, especially in the LSP space, the logistics space, the carrier space, the brokerage space. It's like, it feels like everybody knows everybody. We just started kind of going to conferences a few years ago, and we started within pharma. Now, this past year, we've started going to other industry conferences. You mentioned Manifest. We're going to Manifest next year. We just came back from IFPA, the food and floral show. And it's like, it's the scale of these conferences is massive, but yet it feels like everybody kind of knows everybody. And that's
so true.
I think your point is well taken.
Well, I want to say hi to Eric and Ivan, Chuck over on my personal LinkedIn. Thank you so much for joining us today. I have this annoying fly. I'm sorry about that. If you see this thing flying around, because I've been seeing it flying around, but yes, that's what's happening. All right. Before we get to our first article, can you give us a little bit of a market update? Like what's happening in cold chain right now?
Yeah, so I think, it really depends on the industry that you're looking at, but the industry that we've been a part of the longest, the life sciences and pharmaceutical industry, I think, I mentioned the contrarian take, and we kind of came on the scene three years ago, and everyone was talking about the importance of visibility and track and trace and live streaming product location and condition. And those things are important. They're very important enablers to be able to kind of do a lot more interesting stuff with your data. But we came onto the scene and we kind of asked, so what, right? Like, okay, you have visibility. So what? What are you going to do about it? Who's going to take the action? How is this data actionable? How are you adding context? And so I think the market over the last 2 or 3 years, with the amount of IoT data that has started to infiltrate the market and the scale of IoT deployment, the market has started to realize that there's just way too much data. The data in and of itself it doesn't add all that much value. And so you have to start aggregating it, and you have to start doing things with it to be able to, quantify risk within your network at the aggregate level, to be able to build predictive capabilities, right? And be able to proactively see where on-time in-full failures are going to happen. And now that's possible. So I think there's this awakening that the industry is realizing visibility in and of itself is not enough. You need to kind of utilize that building block of visibility to be able to contextualize data, to be able to understand risk, to be able to build prediction algorithms and models and anticipate failures before they occur. I think we're also starting to see the use of all of this data in the aggregate to drive optimization decisions. So things like, understanding at scale, am I over optimizing or under optimizing my packaging, right? Do I have too much thermal life programmed into a particular lane or a particular route based on seasonality, based on which route I'm taking, based on the carrier that's shipping, routing optimizations, right? So being able to look at 3 different routes and say, this route has 10 stops, this route has 25 stops, this route's taking me 7 days, and this route's taking me 3 days, but maybe there's a CO2 trade-off. So being able to take all of this information in the aggregate and make real-time dynamic trade-off decisions around how you set up your network and your supply chain is a huge trend that we've been seeing over the last year or two.
Well, and that kind of, transition us. And I want everybody to stay tuned because we've got a really big announcement at the end of this show, just so everybody knows. But that transitions us into our first article because we're talking about 2-day or less shipping. And you've brought up predictive, you've brought up visibility, you've brought up routes. And what they were talking about here in this particular article is that there is a climate change threat. And, Walmart, Amazon, Target, they've had to invest a lot of money into this to keep the 2-day or less shipping actually going because of hurricanes, because of heat waves, because of droughts, to be able to quickly pivot and make sure that they've got product in right locations to be able to deliver within that 2-day or less, even if there is a weather event happening, right? What did you think about this article?
Yeah, I thought it was very interesting. I mean, we've been hearing about prediction and predictive capabilities for some time. I think the building blocks of what comes before prediction have to be there. And so, we know that companies have historically kind of taken two opinions or two lenses of thought towards prediction. One is I'm going to build prediction off of a mass ingestion of data, and I'm going to use, volume of data to drive my algorithms. The other school of thought is I'm going to focus on really, really clean input data, and I'm going to contextualize my data. I'm going to properly classify my data, pre-process it, I'm going to have a deep understanding of what each and every input into my algorithm means.
Mm-hmm.
And that even if the volume of data isn't there, it's going to yield more accurate prediction capabilities.
Mm-hmm.
I think prediction in and of itself is a very, very valuable tool. Now, on the flip side, if you say that you do prediction and you don't do it well, you kind of tarnish, I think, the capability and the promise of what prediction can deliver. But prediction, if executed well, can unlock a lot of capabilities for you. It can reduce product loss. It can help you optimize, like I said earlier, your packaging decisions, your routing decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And most importantly, to your point, you can start bringing in not just the things you can control, so things like routing and which carrier you're using, the packaging, but things beyond your control, like weather, like geopolitical risks. And you can start to tie that in ahead of time and understand how your routes, how your network is going to look like before your product gets to those locations and actually, has to go through a hurricane or through a heat event or through a port strike or something else, right? So.
Yeah, and I highly recommend everybody going to check out that article. They actually talk about how much money Walmart, Target, and Amazon are investing to be able to keep to 2-day shipping. And they feel like that investment is actually a good investment because it's, what did they say? They said the cost of keeping the shipping versus keeping customer loyalty. So they're looking at the two, keeping customers loyal versus the cost and the investment of actually keeping that 2-day shipping, which I thought was really, really interesting. I think it's a huge payoff. So check that out. Go ahead.
No, absolutely. And I think it's really interesting because I think customer loyalty is especially on the consumer and the retail side. It's a no-brainer, right? Because consumers, nowadays they can complain, they can go viral, you can see all this very transparently. On the B2B side, when companies think through the ROI, what's my ROI of keeping my customers happy? Certainly you have, the churn aspect, the NPS score, et cetera. But that is not as evident, I think, in terms of the return on investment. Is a happy customer, and on the consumer side, it's very evident and it's very relatable to you and I because we are consumers. But on the B2B side, it's a little different.
Such a great point. All right, let's get to our second article. So this is a blog that PackSafe put out. You wrote it, and you were recently, I believe, at Logipharma. And so talk to me a little bit about your takeaways. I think you have 8 key takeaways that you took away from Logipharma around cold chain. And some of them are I thought were really interesting because you said segmented visibility, which we haven't heard before, digitized passive data. So it brought up a lot of things that we aren't hearing a lot about in the industry. So why did you pick those 8? And let's go through that.
Yeah, so I've put out a similar article, I think, for the last 3 years that I've attended this very conference. And this is probably one of my more popular thought pieces where I try to take a look. And again, as an outsider, I didn't grow up in pharma. I did pharma consulting, so I'm familiar enough with how pharma works and what's important to pharma. But as an outsider looking in, I'm looking at all of the things, all the great discussions that I have over those 3 days with customers, with prospective customers, and kind of aggregating it into bite-sized pieces. I think, some of the key takeaways that I've found, and I think you have one of them up here, IoT adoption is quick, but rollouts are slow. I think, if you look 10 years ago, IoT adoption was very, very slow. Over the last 5 or 6 years, it's really, really accelerated. And companies are getting to a decision around, hey, we want to roll out real-time visibility into our network very quickly. But they're underestimating how long it's actually going to take to execute, to deploy all of those sensors into the field. And there's a myriad of reasons for that. That's one of the key takeaways that I saw. For that very reason, to your point, you mentioned passive data. I think there was a foregone conclusion a couple years ago that, hey, everything's going to go real time. There's going to be no need for passive IoT devices in pharma, for example. That's no longer the case. Customers are very quickly realizing that, this whole transition of going to real time and digitizing and moving towards real time IoT is going to take years. And passive data loggers are going to be around, and the importance of extracting valuable information from those data loggers, the importance of being able to use the data from those data loggers to automate product release and the accept reject process around product evaluation. I think all of those things are becoming much more evident, and that's what I try to capture in these annual.
And can I just say that I love the fact that you use these memes? Like, they're so on point and they want to make me keep reading. So I highly recommend that you go and check out all of these 8 takeaways that Ilya had. And the reason why I say that, because it's not just for cold chain, right? It's also for logistics and supply chain in general. It can really be translated into the industry in a variety of different ways. One of the things that you mentioned is monitoring is too expensive. I mean, we don't just have monitoring in cold chain, we have monitoring in logistics and supply chain. Is it expensive? What are people paying per shipment? What does that look like? Does it need to be that way? We have to be asking these questions of ourselves and our technology vendors and of our supply chain environment so that we can make changes and look to the future of what we want that to look like.
That's exactly right. And we always joke internally, and we kind of say, if you can do cold chain, you can do anything else, right? Because that extra variable of temperature and humidity, that adds the absolute most complexity. Everything else is kind of working backwards. Now, when we think about all the things, to your point, that are important, there are things that are time sensitive. There are things that are important purely for their value because they're very expensive. There are things that are very fragile that are being shipped, and frequently electronics, right? Frequent targets of theft and counterfeiting. And so I think to that point, if any of those, temperature sensitive, time sensitive, valuable, fragile, a subset of any of those make monitoring, make IoT and track and trace and visibility important technologies to deploy towards.
Yeah. So we only have a couple of minutes left, and I want to make sure that we announce our big announcement. And so let me just put this up. So drum roll, please. I don't have a drum roll, but just think about it being a drum roll. Anyways, we've got a brand new show that is coming out November 21st, hosted by Ilya, and it's going to be from PackSafe. So first of all, I want to say congratulations on your Series A. As we can see on the screen there, you have had that announcement. And now we've got the announcement of this brand new show. So can you tell everybody in a nutshell, like why they should tune in, what you're going to be covering, what that show is going to all be about?
Yeah, absolutely. So the show is going to be called Frost Bites.
Yes.
We have the best marketing team in the world. But yeah, it's going to be bite-sized chunks of us interviewing thought leaders and influencers and executives in the industry within cold chain. So from pharma, from produce, from food and bev, from valuables, etc. And they'll be sharing their experiences, their biggest success stories, their biggest failures, various industry complexities and innovations and trends, all the way across the board. And so we'll be doing these little 30-minute podcast series starting next month, starting November, and we're very excited to announce here in a few weeks who our first guest will be. But a lot of these people, are broadly recognized as leaders in their respective fields, and it's going to be a great learning experience.
Yes. All right. So if you're not following us on Let's Talk Supply Chain, if you're not following PackSafe, make sure you follow both of us because we're going to be streaming to those pages. But also, you can be the first to know once we have that event page up, so you can click the attend button. We always send you the recording, so click the attend button on any of our live shows. And we want to keep you up to date on what is happening in logistics and supply chain across the board. I can't wait for the show. I'm going to be tuning in. And yeah, I think it's going to be amazing. Like I said, cold chain is such a hot topic right now. They're talking about it at TPM and Manifest. They're making space for it. They're making time for it. Like huge parts of the agenda are being dedicated to cold chain. And so it's a really big conversation that we need to have. And I can't wait to see who you bring on the show. Well, Ilya, thank you so much for joining me here today for Thoughts and Coffee. And we'll see you on these back on these channels on November 21st.
Excellent. Looking forward to it. Thank you so